Hello, welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live video series, and with me today to share the stories behind the 10 books that had the most significant impact on her is artist, writer, poet, rebel humanitarian, love catalyst, the founder and steward of 1111 Media, Simran Singh. Simran, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's always so good to be with you, Sandie.
You too, yeah. We just create things so that we can get together and catch up.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I should tell everybody that when I said that you are the creator of the 1111 Media, that encompasses so many wonderful things. And if you've got pens and pencils handy, you may need them because you're going to want to check a few things out, because 1111 Media, it comprises the Nautilus Award-winning 1111 Magazine, which is free, and the #1 rated 1111 talk radio show. And I think you also do 1111 Interviews TV, and you've got the 1111 Mastermind community. And in addition to all of that, you're the author of 3 award-winning books, and you're the only person that I know who has just dashed off 3 more. As you do. Oh, I'm writing 3 books at once, which we'll talk about later in the show. You're in for a treat tonight. So we're going to start with the 2 important questions that I ask everyone, which actually you pretty much answered on your contribution on your page. You answered both in one, and they are: what do books mean to you, and what was it like for you to have to compile this list? So tell us.
Oh, Sandie, I love books. Like, I love books. That is what I eat, sleep, and breathe. And I believe that I love books so much because my whole life, as I think most people probably do, it's been a quest for belonging. And books and writers and stories and consciousness and anything that gets shared gives me a chance to see more of me. It gives me an opportunity to meet myself in someone else. And that feels like connection, because ultimately for my soul, what I desired is connection, to see and be seen, to hear and be heard, to acknowledge and be acknowledged, to love and be loved. And books do that for me. Most books that I have ended up coming across, for most people, I think they go out seeking and they look for books to give them information. For some reason, it's been almost the opposite for me, because I love experience, that books tend to come to me after the fact to confirm what I've already gleaned for myself. And so that's been an additional beautiful experience, because that confirmation helps me feel like I belong. And it allows me to feel connected to the world that is larger than me, because I'm very introspective. I've lived a very cave-like life. I stay in a lot in my mind, which I think is why I am such a creative. I think creatives often do that. And to be able to touch the heart of another writer through their stories or their writings is almost a doorway back into my own. And it shows me that we are so infinitely and deeply connected.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is you're never alone with a book.
No.
No.
It's the ultimate connection.
Yeah, I get that. I really do. So your list, you did put it in order for me, and we're going to start with the book that was published in 1988, Many Lives, Many Masters, the true story of a prominent psychiatrist, his young patient, and the past life therapy that changed both their lives. And it kind of did something for you too, didn't it?
Oh my goodness, that book, that was the book that started my spiritual journey. It was like I knew that there was more out there, and I knew that I was the psychedelic sheep of the family at age 12 and 15 and 19, and I was the odd one and the strange one, and I was about to be arranged to be married. And this book fell in my lap, and I'm reading through Catherine's story about going into these past lives, and I'm tapping into all these things of, well, is that why I know certain things? Is that why my life has been certain ways? And does this man and I, do we have something that we're here to connect with? Because part of me was relieved that I didn't have to pick out my own husband because I was afraid that I would pick wrong. And then the other part of me was terrified at the thought of marrying a man that I didn't know. And I read the book and was exhilarated by it. And there was this psychic in there named Iris that Catherine went to at the very end that literally reconfirmed everything that she had discovered on her own through her past lives. And so I found Iris and I called her up and I said, tell me about me. And I didn't tell her what I was about to do, but she said to me, she said, you're about to be married to a man and you've had many lives together, 4 extremely painful ones. And you have come back together to do it right this time. And you are meant to stay together. Otherwise, you have to come back again. And so I thought, I'm not coming back here. I'm just not going to do that. And ultimately, it shows us how sometimes when we read words or we hear something from someone else, we can let that dictate our life. Because I stayed in a very painful marriage for far too long, simply because I kept thinking, but I don't want to come back. I don't want to do this again with him. I must need to do something else to fix me. And so my own life has been a beautiful journey of experience and testing out things and traveling down different roads. And when I look at this title, Many Lives, Many Masters, I feel like I've lived many lives in this lifetime. And I've stepped into different levels of mastery in and of themselves. Plus we have that bubble that's so many different lives that are possible that we've already lived as well, which all exist at once. So it was a very powerful beginning.
So how have you reconciled that? I mean, you're no longer with your former husband. Are you resigned to coming back?
No, I'm not coming back. I think I completed my work here. Not from a place of I don't like being here, just that I really do feel like I've done incredibly deep work in this lifetime, and that there are ways I can serve in different capacities. And how I reconciled that was I kept making up that healing the relationship meant staying in it, to living it out, to completing it and dying with us married. And I got to the certain point that I realized it has nothing to do with whether we're together or not. It's whether I can live at peace, in full forgiveness and in love with him, regardless of who he is or what we are to each other, or whether we're together or not. And that was the completion that had to happen in this lifetime.
And yeah, I mean, what a wise understanding to come to, you know, and obviously a freeing one as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it is all about love. I picked a couple of little things in here. Since we're talking about these books, I thought I'd read a couple of little things that that maybe would be nuggets that would be left with the people that are watching. I know that there's a reason for everything. Perhaps at the moment that an event occurs, we have neither the insight nor the foresight to comprehend the reason. But with time and patience, it will come to light. And it did. And it does.
Yeah.
Humankind has not learned about balance, let alone practiced it. It is guided by greed and ambition, steered by fear. In this way, it will eventually destroy itself, but nature will survive. At least the plants will. Happiness is rooted in simplicity. The tendency to excessiveness in thought and action diminishes happiness. Excesses cloud basic values. Religious people tell us that happiness comes from filling one's heart with love, from faith and hope, and practicing charity and dispensing kindness. They are actually right. These are collectively a state of being. In these days, they are the altered state of consciousness. Just simplicity and kindness. Yeah. That's enlightenment.
Yeah. Before we leave that book, Iris, I'm sure everybody is going to say, I want her number.
Oh my goodness, that was 25 years ago. I don't even know if Iris is still on the planet.
Ah, wow, what a gift she was. I mean, just to be able to track her down, find her, and have that confirmation when you needed it.
Obviously, I was meant to have the conversation. When we are to connect to a book or a person or an experience, it happens. That's what's destined for us.
Book number 2, Love Without Conditions by Paul Ferrini, 1992. Now, this was the pick, one of the top 10 for last week's guest, the absolutely gorgeous Stephen Washington. And of course, we had Iyanla on the show, and she told us about this and how it is something that she insists every one of her students read. And I know that Iyanla, you've worked with Iyanla, and she's done the foreword for your books as well. So clearly she made you read that, but with good reason if it's number 2 on your list.
She did. I was in the fashion industry. I had grown up in a family business for 30 years, and somehow a fashion blog turned into a self-reflective self-help blog. And then I decided to seek out my life coaching certification. And the individual I was led to was Iyanla Vanzant. And so I attended her Intervisions Worldwide Institute. And the very first book she had us read was Love Without Conditions. And it is a book I believe everyone should read. Paul Ferrini is an incredible author. He should be so much more well-known than he is, because his words are pure and truth, and they're just love. Everything he writes is pure love. And this book was confirmation that our biological family, whatever happens in that family, it has purpose, it shapes us, and it's our work to do, again, for acceptance and unconditional love, and to realize that there's this divine orchestration to the people that have shown up in our life, and that they're all working for us to attain that beautiful space of awareness and awakening. But ultimately, the work has to be our own. And ultimately, we have to be the one to live with love without conditions. And so it was a very, very powerful book for me. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I do think that the nearest and the dearest that try us the most are the ones that can teach us the most, if we will let them.
Yes, most definitely. A couple of nuggets from this one. Parents, spouses, and children are here to help you see your own need for healing, and you are performing the same function in their life. Looking for unconditional love in a world of conditions must inevitably fail. Since all your brothers and sisters are acting out of shame-based patterns, they cannot offer you the love you know that you deserve, nor can you offer it to them. The best you can do is raise each other's awareness of love that is necessary, and begin taking responsibility for giving it to yourself. And then another section says, hidden wounds have hidden agendas that hold us hostage to the past. Deep wounds may require bandaging at first, but to complete the healing process, they must be exposed to air and sunlight. Conscious awareness must be brought to all unconscious beliefs and assumptions. And finally, if you're ready for the experience of unconditional love, you will move through every fear you ever had and every limit ever placed upon yourself to a place that is beyond fear or limits, and this place you call heaven. Going to heaven, ending the cycle of birth and death, entering nirvana, transcending karma, moving beyond the conditioned mind, all mean the same thing. This is the ultimate destination of the journey of consciousness. And I think it was from this book that I realized the only purpose that I'm here on the planet is to do my work. That anything outside of me is not going to serve me or the world. But my willingness to do the work to transcend my own wounds and limitations and hurts and judgments and pains, that is the best service that I could give myself, my children, my partner, my family, this world. And that led me down the path that I am on today, that I continue to be on. It was this one book.
Do you think that we ever get to a point where we've done all of our work?
Yes, we'll go poof and we won't be here anymore.
or maybe it's just, come on, you're slacking there, get out, come back and start again.
Exactly.
Yeah. So book number 3 is another book that Iyanla had on her list, Legacy of the Heart, The Spiritual Advantage of a Painful Childhood by Wayne Muller, published in 1993.
Yes, I owe it to Ayanla for several of the books that started me on my journey, including her own. Her
Yeah.
own books are quite powerful. And Legacy of the Heart was a powerful one for me because, and this is probably the one book that was not confirmation. This is the one book that was seeking, that was teaching me something, that was really having me explore aspects of myself that I was not sure that I even had, because I was a robot. I lived as a robot. I began working at the age of 4, and we were not a household that hugged or touched. Um, it was an experience where I had to go up and ask for a hug to get one. And so I didn't even know if I had a heart. I didn't even know if I could feel. That was not something we did in our house. We weren't allowed to cry. And so there was no sense of feeling or emotion anywhere in my body when I even went to Iyanla's Institute. It was foreign to me that people had feelings, and what does that mean? Like, I understand it's a word, but what does it really mean to truly feel? And this book, Legacy of the Heart with Wayne Muller, helped me to realize there's something inside of me that I will stop at nothing to get at. And what I've realized is that my life has had a tremendous amount of pain because my longing, my desire has been to feel. And to truly feel the depths of love and joy and belonging, you have to break down that hard shell that surrounds the heart. Like we don't want heartbreak, but yeah, that's the only way to get to the heart. Like the M&M coating has to break apart so that we can get to the center. And so I'm truly grateful for all of the heartbreak and the grief that entered my life, because I do have a heart. Like I actually do have one, and I can feel it now. And it is the most glorious thing. And to be able to tap into tears, sacred waters coming through me that are divine, sacred tears, or to tap into laughter and joy, or have the feeling of fulfillment, would not be possible unless I was willing to crack up the heart space and let it shatter open. And I think that's the one thing that people are so afraid of, and it gets forced upon us. But when it gets forced upon us, we create an even harder shell, rather than letting the heart truly be open and truly be soft. And so a couple of things from here. We may begin to feel our belonging in the breath. Here we may take sanctuary. Here we begin to feel our place in creation, taking refuge in each breath of our life, in each beat of our heart. We find a quiet place of belonging. This refuge, this sanctuary, is neither given nor taken away by the chaotic demands of an unpredictable world. This place belongs to us and we to it. It is where we make our home. The more you are able to work in a spirit of detachment, the closer you come to working for God rather than for yourself. The less strain there is on your nerves. You don't worry much about things, and therefore you do not get confused or mixed up or tired. In fact, you learn to recognize that your self-love, your pride, is trying to take over the work by your reactions. When you are exhausted and upset and haunted by work that seems to be going badly, it means you're working for yourself and are taking the consequences. But when you are free, you work with an ease that amazes you, half the time without any necessity for special thought on your part. God seems to remove obstacles and do half the work for you. When God wants a thing done, the speed with which it achieves completion and success almost takes your breath away. This was powerful because to get to my heart, I had to first start breathing, and I didn't realize how shallow my breath is. We all breathe so shallow. And sometimes I wasn't even breathing at all. And so to tap into the heart and to recognize what a robotic workaholic I had become in those years, and to even let go of the idea that I was doing anything at all, that actually in slowing down, that more could be accomplished, more heart could come through me, more spirit could use me, was a foreign concept, but yet one that teased me constantly. And it was this deep journey into the heart, the different layers, and truly understanding that detachment does not mean not feeling. It actually feels so much more. It is willing to drown in the feelings and immerse itself in all that is going on, but hold it in that holy space, the way that the divine would. And that's a whole different level of the heart. That is the legacy of the heart, to sit with such presence and reverence and sacredness to everything that's happening, whether it is COVID-19 or forest fires or political issues, or a child that's sick in the bed, or a parent that is dying, or a relationship that is ending, or the most mundane chores of your day. Can you sit in the true sacredness and divinity of all of it and let your heart break at the same time?
That's very powerful, thought. I have a question, and feel free to tell me if it's too personal. But given what you said about your upbringing and the lack of physical contact and affection, when you changed, did your family change?
I continued to keep changing. And what was unlike me continued to move out of my life. And that's what love does.
Yeah.
And that too cracked me open more. I think loss and grief are truly the path to enlightenment. I think aloneness, especially if you're truly alone and you truly allow the sanctity of that space to feel the depths of aloneness, to the place where you realize how together you are, is a very powerful thing. And regardless of the experiences that I have had with my relationship or with my family, I would not have grown more had those things not happened. And I truly and deeply see how much all souls have to love another to play out the roles that they have to play out. And to be able to reciprocate that gratitude and that unconditional love for loss and grief and pain, and to be able to neutralize it and alchemize it, to be something so much more that it doesn't matter whether a person's in your life or not in your life, or it doesn't matter what has happened, that you can walk in the room and be with them and not have any trigger, is a beautiful place to come to as a human being. It's easy to do that as a divine being, because we have these ways when we become light workers, or when we become more enlightened or higher consciousness than everyone else. It's very easy to back off and say, oh, well, this is just how they are and I'm better than that. But to really get to the place where you find yourself in them and you exactly see what it was you created with that mirror and how it really always was within you first. that's the gift that they bring. And so it did bring us back together in that way. Like there's a closer union and communion with them because I see them and I see myself in ways I could never have seen them or myself before. And it's only with love. It does not mean that physically all of those relationships are back together.
Mm. You know, I was talking to somebody a week or two ago, and they were citing 11 studies that showed that people would rather press a button that's going to give them an electric shock than be alone with their thoughts. And so few of us like to be alone, want to be alone, can cope with being alone with our thoughts for very long. You are one of the few people that I know who has the courage and the tenacity to go there and stay there.
It's the most extraordinary gift that an individual can give themselves. And having done it, because I did it for the past 7 years, that has been my path, my cycle for the past 7 years. And what I would say to people is, most individuals would say, I could never go and be alone. I would go crazy. And I would say to them, you are crazy. That's why you can't be alone. When you get to your aloneness, you will find you're crazy. And you will be able to love it and release it and allow yourself to find your true sanity. We really don't have any idea of how unconscious we are until we're with ourselves.
I agree. So book number 4 is The Yoga of Relationship by Yogi Amrit Desai, published in 2010. We now get into a few books that are a bit more recent. What was it about this book that impacted you the most?
You know, this is about relationship. And if you truly want to grow spiritually, it's going to be in relationship. They teach you everything. Amrit is an amazingly simple and beautiful man. He actually was instrumental in creating Kripalu. And he has written this book with such tenderness and love. There's an essence of Rumi in it, and I've always loved Rumi. And I think that the discussions about relationship here are quite profound because they discuss relationship, but yet it's all about the self, which is ultimately all that's here. There's only you and God in the room. There's only me and God in the room. So ultimately it is the relationship with self. One of the lines he has in here is, self-improvement without self-awareness is self-torture. Awareness is double-ended. It comes at us from both directions. Like a boomerang, we send it out only for it to return. Self-observation is a 360-degree operation. And I think that's the thing. We don't look at ourselves 360. We look at ourselves either in the mirror that we see, and we're still only coming from a lens of projection of the people that reared us, or we're looking from some outside place onto a landscape that we want to see, not what actually is. And so to be able to look at oneself and at life and experiences and circumstances from that 360 spectrum, it's almost like scoping out of our eyesight and looking from the divine and really just seeing the play of the world where everyone's equal. And I think that that's the essence of the book. It's allowing people to understand that when you're looking at relationship, you have to look from the divine perspective at what's really going on. Otherwise, it's just wounds fighting wounds, or words being thrown at words, and nothing ever gets solved. And we see that in the world. It's because everyone is so tunnel visioned and just looking from themselves. And another paragraph, most of us confuse freedom with escape. We want to be free, liberated from suffering, separation, and limitation, but we don't realize that the real obstacle exists inside of us. So in the name of freedom, we do everything we can to escape discomfort, responsibility, and commitment, the life experiences that could help us most. And I think the deceptive intelligence will have us run off and do something so fast with such impulse that we don't even realize how we escape everything, ourselves, relationships, our wounds, our fears. We're just in a constant state of fight, flight, and escape. And so he says the third key is containment. And containment means holding the energy of an experience inside of us rather than immediately reacting in some habitual way to discharge it. If we can contain an experience, the energy, we can create a gap between the stimulus and our pre-programmed defensive response. We can give ourselves the chance to see more clearly and act from a place of choice rather than conditioning. And as I said before, I think we are all so unconscious, which is why we're still here on the planet. And we have no idea of how truly conditioned we are, and that our identities are lived from that conditioning. And my life has been such that it's been deep exploration of the relationships that I have with myself, with the identities that I believe that I am, so that I can continually discard them. I don't want to become more of who I am, because that's the ego's thought of who I am. I much prefer dissolving. And I think the practice of being alone, the receptivity to grief and loss, my shadow, the willingness to meet the animal inside of me, the demon that lives inside of me, the angel that lives inside of me, and the God that lives inside and is coming through me, is more and more the true identity that we all have. And we have to be willing to be in relationship to those aspects. So when I think of yoga of relationship, he's speaking of man, woman, or person to person. But in the end, if we're really the only one here, it's truly the relationship to every aspect within ourselves, known and unknown.
Mm. Number 5, I have to say, I think the regulars who join us every week are probably very well aware that I'm speaking the least that I ever speak. You always have that effect on me, Simran. So, number 5, The Return of the Feminine and the World Soul by Llewellyn Vaughan Lee, published in 2009.
Such a rich book. Oh my gosh, I did not realize how masculine I was. I have been such a man. I used to joke when I was a child that I was a man in my previous life. I think I've always been men in my previous lives. I had such a drive and an ambition, and I know that I was conditioned into that and working from being a young child, and I was the queen or king of multitasking. Like I could do that like no other. I could get things done in 2 hours that would take most people a month to get completed. And I thought that was some great feat until I discovered you're just being a man and you're being a shadow man. We're not here to be men, we're women, and we're here to be feminine. And this book not only grounded that longing and desire and that continual work that I was in the process of, which was softening. I just wanted to soften. I want to know what it means to be feminine. I want to know what it means to be receptive and open. And I don't want to be the one that always takes charge. And I don't want to be the one that always has the answer. And I don't want to be the one that always takes control and gets it done and fixes everything. Can I just be the sacred witness and be the feminine and allow life? Because truly, as the feminine, we're here to be the inspiration. All action is of the masculine. And so I think that so much of our world is imbalanced because we have men that are in their masculine, shadow or healthy, and then we have women that are in their masculine, shadow or healthy, and we have a deficit of feminine. We might look it, but we don't act it, and we don't allow the energy of it. And Llewellyn's book not only grounds what the feminine means, but it grounds the stewardship that we as women must embody for this greater soul. It's not just about us. It's not just about Simi. It's not just about, my lifetime and what I'm here to accomplish. My energy as the feminine is part of the balance. And if I'm not willing to have myself in that balance and in that place of power, then I'm part of the imbalance that's on this planet. And so this was just a really rich book to read. The feminine knows that the darkness is real and life-giving. She also knows the secrets of love and longing, because love is a feminine mystery. Yet she is reluctant to live her real passion, bring it out into the light of consciousness, just as the masculine is reluctant to leave the safety of what he knows, the positions of power he has established over centuries, and step into the fertile darkness of the unknown. Each time when humanity has come to this step, it has turned back. Can this moment be different? Can we walk forward together, men and women, naked, unafraid of either the light or the darkness? And my period of time, particularly this past 7 years, has been about going into the darkness, going into the womb. I think as women, the greatest thing we can do right now is do what Mother Earth is doing, do what the great mother that created all of creation is doing. And that is beholding the heartbreak of having lost her children, of having them go wayward, of having them be under the confines and conditioning of a world gone mad. And to sit in that place of darkness and grief from this knowing that in that something new will be born. And that sacred witnessing and that new that can be born is what will change the world. When the Dalai Lama said the Western woman will change this world, it's not because we're going out and being activists and chanting and screaming and fighting and clamoring for our rights. It's because we're reclining back into the truth of what the feminine is. I read an article yesterday and it was talking about, because of COVID and children being homeschooled, there's so many women that are having to leave their jobs and go back home. And I thought, what a balance. And some women or people might think, well, that's a reversal. We should have the right. But what greater position could we have than stewarding our young and bringing truly healthy human beings into this world? And it's not that we can't have other passions, but I think we're stepping into masculine energy when we move too quickly to do that rather than being inspired. At this time of global crisis and imbalance, women have a unique role. A woman feels the pulse of life as intimately as she feels her own blood pulsing through her veins. Her knowing is not abstract, but lived in her very body in a way that is inaccessible to men. In the cells of her body, she carries the light of the consciousness of oneness, a light that is not present in men's bodies. In this light, she knows the interconnectedness of life, how it is all a part of one living whole. This primal knowing needs to be given back to life, which is suffering under the masculine thought forms of duality and separation. Our science has imposed upon life the image of the world as dead matter, something we can freely pollute and abuse. Feminine spiritual consciousness can reawaken the world to its sacred nature as a living being, and so to help it heal and transform. This simple acknowledgement of the divine within life is a powerful catalyst, transforming the life of the world, just as a woman's awareness of the divine nature of the child growing within her can transform her own life. We hold such a power as women and as the feminine that the only way for us to reclaim it is to pause, is to stop, is to feel, is to rest and recline and relax back into the truth of what feminine really represents.
And I think women know this, and they've been conditioned to fear it
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're exhausted. Just the exhaustion is indication and sign of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, book number 6 is The New Divine Feminine, Spiritual Evolution for a Woman's Soul by Megan Don, published in 2016. What did that book give you that you didn't have before you read it?
Megan is such a brilliant, brilliant woman. So whoever doesn't know Megan Don needs to know her. She's really, really quite brilliant. This was confirmation. I had gone through a severe trauma, a lot of loss, a lot of grief. I sat in my darkness. I sat in meeting the crone and the hag and all of these parts of myself that I needed to meet. And I particularly fell in love with my shadow, who has been a quite beautiful instrumental piece of me. And all of that comprises the divine feminine. And so when I came across Megan's book, it was, again, it was like coming home and saying, you got it, you understand, we've been down this same path together. I see you and you see me. And we actually met to do an interview, and then later she was on my radio show, and she ended up living in my town, and we just sat together and we cried, and we were overjoyed at how beautiful it is to truly see another soul, to truly see and feel another soul's heart. And it wasn't that we even spoke a lot of words. It was just such a recognition. And I think that that's part of the divine feminine. So when we do our work, when we're willing to meet ourselves, there is such a reverence and recognition for others that have done the same. And there's a sisterhood there and a connection there that is unspoken, but so connected.
Yes, it's a connection that doesn't need words. Mm.
He says, our bodies need to become central to our spiritual journey, and increasingly among women, it is being shared that the body has begun speaking through its physical pains. These pains are an invitation to us to listen and to feel, usually where we have been unwilling to previously go. We need to make the appropriate space and time to answer these body sensations and what they bring. Great liberation can be found in crying those uncried tears, in feeling that anger that was not allowed expression, in soothing the trauma of days gone by. And in becoming familiar with this, we can then engage in the moment as much as we are able, so nothing becomes stored for later. Embodiment is not just about getting back into the earthly body. It is also returning to the light body and allowing these two to become as one. And I read this book after having gone through different layers. So the loss I experienced was the loss of my children no longer being with me, and that was probably the most painful thing that could have ever happened in my life. It was painful enough to stop me. And as I grieved what I thought I was feeling, all of a sudden, I got this sensation that I was no longer grieving for me. I got the sensation that I was grieving for my mother who had lost children, and her mother who had lost children, and all the way back to the way that we all have lost in some way, shape, or form children or our own selves in that way. And that this was a collective grieving that started to come through me. And then once that was completed, I started to have these aches and pains. And the mind wants to identify or make up a story as to what that belongs to. And yet something inside of me said, there is some type of dissolving process that is going on. There's a disintegration that is happening. And it's a disintegration of identity, but more so, I think my body is feeling what it picked up from 0 to 7 that I never even knew existed. And I think that that's part of why aloneness is so important, why feeling our feelings is so important, is because the body holds such memory that doesn't have words, that doesn't have intellectual understanding, that just feels. And I think that that's why sometimes we just cry at will and don't have any clue why. Or we sometimes get angry in our bodies and we have no clue what it comes from. Or we don't feel well sometimes and we can't fathom, well, what did I do? Did I eat something? It's none of that. It's the memory of the body and earlier trauma or earlier memories. And the best thing to do is be alone with it and allow it to be felt and allow it to pass through. And Megan understood that, and I had just been through it. And so it was confirmation for me that I was sitting and staying in the place that I had committed to, because I had made the commitment to myself that if this much pain had been brought into my life, the best service and what was being required of me was to stay with it until it told me to get back up. And so this was part of that process of staying in the dark. We all want to be in the light. Who doesn't want to be in the light? But the true light is in the darkness. Otherwise, we're just using artificial light. And I didn't want to live artificial lighting anymore. If I'm going to be light, I'm going to light it up from the real source. And so that's where I was intending to go. And I knew the darkness was the place to go to get it. Yeah.
Book number 7, The Sacred Ego, Making Peace with Ourselves and Our World. Jalala Bonheim. I don't know how she pronounces it.
She is so brilliant too. This is another book that everyone needs to read, because I think we give the ego such a bad rap. And one of my huge places was I didn't want to have an ego, number one. So I tried so hard not to have an ego, and you can't not have one. But I tried really hard not to have one. And I have people in my life that have very big egos. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm just compensating because their egos are so big. I have a really little one, which is an ego in itself. But what we don't realize is our undeservingness, our unworthiness, our inability to create abundance, our lack of a way to receive love. It's all ego. That's other forms of ego. And it all has purpose because it's all leading us to our power. And as I was sitting in my quiet and my stillness and going through all of my emotions and thoughts and things that were happening through this period of time, what I kept bumping up against were different levels of ego, and starting to see how truly sacred all of these were, because number one, they just were formed to protect, but number two, they were leading me to a much deeper experience of me if I was willing to let them carry me, rather than fighting them, rather than trying to dismantle them or kill them off or not want them. If I just would surrender to them and say, show me what you have to show me. And so Jalada's book, The Sacred Ego, really helped confirm that the ego, again, like the shadow, like the darkness, these are like secret passageways to our knowingness. But we've been taught to get rid of all this stuff and to not face it. And so how would we know? But that's the secret, right? We get hooked on practices, we get hooked on protocols, we go take every workshop, we stay seeking, we keep going out, when everything we need truly is right within us. And it's hiding in the dark. And so this was a powerful one. The ego, we're told, is trapped in the illusion of its own separateness. This is true, but let's not overlook a crucial point. The ego's self-centeredness is sourced in nature's goodness. Nature is in love with life and wants it to continue. She doesn't want her creatures to fade into oblivion. Therefore, she has implanted in them a powerful sense of attachment to their individual existence that makes them willing to fight tooth and claw for their survival. The ego is, in other words, nature's most loyal and devoted servant. Nature has entrusted our ego with the sacred task of ensuring our survival. If it clings to the illusion of separateness, it's because that's precisely what nature wants and needs it to do. Without the ego's devoted service, our species would have gone extinct long ago. So we have to cherish the ego.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. If anybody's interested, on her site, She has a free 7-day course that you can download, Struggling to Maintain Inner Peace. And yeah, it's completely free, but she also does an awful lot of circle work, doesn't she?
Beautiful.
Yeah, and yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of people who, especially women, very, very interested in circle work. So definitely worth checking out her website. So number 8, letting go of good, dispel the myth of goodness to find your genuine self. Andrea Matthews, 2017. I love the idea of dispelling the myth of goodness.
Yes, yes. That was, aside from being a very dear friend of mine, when this book came out, it was after I had finally really let go of a lot of different identities, being the good girl, being a spiritual person. However anyone looked at me, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what they said. It didn't matter how they saw me. It didn't matter anything. And I think that that goodness is another place that we've been conditioned into. And I had spent so much of my life being that perfect daughter, trying to be that perfect wife, attempting to be the perfect mother, and all of these different things. And this, again, it was confirmation. After reading it, it was like, oh my goodness, she knows, she's right there, and she's a therapist. So it was a mix of personal experience, because she and I have had some similar experiences, but it was also from her professional expertise. And she has written numerous books, but this one was a particularly special one that I've recommended to a lot of people. And I would hold that one up right now and read from it, but I actually lent it to my 19-year-old son. So I don't have it with me. But it is definitely something that we all have to do, is let go of good.
I can't believe your son's 19 now already. My goodness. Yes, yes. Okay. Number 9, belonging to God, spirituality, science, and a universal path of divine love by William Keeping. Again, 2016.
There's so many books. Like, I could have gone back and given you 10,000 books that I love, and I could have given you lots of older books that I love, but I adore celebrating individuals, and I adore celebrating individuals that I really see have embodied what it was that they were wanting to express. And William's book it's like a love letter. And I have always just had this longing, this communion with God is what I've always wanted. It's driven me my whole life, that's the one thing that I'm here for. And so when I read his book, it was like sitting next to someone that was walking the exact same path, and that was noticing the exact same beauty and touching the sacred in these wonderful ways that I was touching the sacred. And I actually ended up interviewing him on my radio show, and it's one of my absolute favorite interviews that I've ever done, because there was such heart. And talk about a balanced masculine feminine. He's definitely a balanced masculine feminine. And his book definitely, portrays that. He writes, the ultimate goal of spirituality is not self-mastery or even compassion and serving others, although these are integral to it. The true purpose of spirituality is self-transcendence. We are called to relinquish our separate self and identity altogether, and become not just an instrument of divine love and will, but ultimately to be the essence of God. This requires us to relinquish spiritual identity altogether. The very notion of being a devoted spiritual seeker must go. Our desire for experiences, even our desire to transcend individuality in union with Godhead, becomes an obstacle, for it is a reassertion of the ego's congenital claim to existential autonomy, and thus a violation of the indispensable prerequisite for the operation of grace. And so there's such richness in here, and he's truly someone that writes about having gone beyond identity and truly embracing the fact that we not only belong to God, but we are.
So that brings us to number 10. Anam Kara, A Book of Celtic Wisdom, John O'Donoghue, 1996.
I love everything John O'Donoghue writes. He to me is the Celtic Rumi. he definitely has this way with knowing life and knowing what it's about and having that communion of what's truly happening. And he writes, the soul adores unity. When you decide to practice inner hospitality, the self-torment ceases. The abandoned, neglected, and negative selves come into seamless unity. The soul is wise and subtle. It recognizes that unity fosters belonging. The soul adores unity. What you separate, the soul joins. As your experience extends and deepens, your memory becomes richer and more complex. Your soul is the priestess of memory, selecting, sifting, and ultimately gathering your vanishing days towards presence. This liturgy of remembrance, literally remembering, always at work within you. Human solitude is rich and endlessly created. And this book was given to me by a dear friend back in 2017. And it was just after experiencing many deaths of identity. I had combed through identity after identity, and he has sections in here on death. And I think we have to make friends with death. And we have to be willing to die over and over again to really find out what true aliveness is. And his writings spoke to me at that time because what was remaining felt like the essence of what he was writing.
Yeah. I love what you wrote when you said it felt like a love letter from Source.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all that I come across, it feels like Source turns around and says, you did good, let me show you. And then I get the book that expresses exactly what I've just experienced.
Yeah.
I get to say, I did do good.
Yeah.
The human me gets to say that, the little me gets to say that, while the divine me celebrates this projection of the human.
Yeah. And you deserve that. And you said, if I had to name an 11th book, sneaking one in there, it would be Your Journey to Enlightenment by Simran Singh. So tell us why.
I love all my books. I think anything that I've written, that's how I integrate. When I go through an experience, I want to record the wisdom and really see what I have learned. And writing is a way to finally get it sealed into my body. I would highly recommend everyone write because it's such a powerful integrative process and communion. And this book was quite special because it felt like a partnership with spirit. My other books really felt like I had learned things and I had written them. This one felt like a combination. And it was a return to a place of innocence as a child, which is something I really didn't know what that was. I didn't know what being a child was or feeling like a child was. And the way this book is written, it feels like a little child expressing and feeling and elated and joyful. And it also feels like a person stretching out of this human skin beyond this limitation and box that we are in, to really understanding that we can live boundlessly and we can be rebellious and we can live beyond time and all of these things. And this was a point where I had just left my marriage and I wanted to not just talk about spiritual things, but really see if everything I had ever written and spoken was true. And so I had embarked on this Rebel Road journey in an RV with my children and going around the country and trying pieces and parts of myself out purely for me. And this book was written at that time. And it was a beautiful communion to go through that at the same time.
Give us the titles of your 3 books that have been published.
There's Conversations with the Universe.
Yes.
And I will read. Every person has embedded within themselves a sacred moment when the soul says, it's time to turn within and know you are already home. Each sign, symbol, and synchronicity is a ticking of that clock until the individual chooses to wake up. There is not one thing in life that does not offer that remembrance and gateway to truth in an intensely soulful and personal way. And then my second book is Your Journey to Enlightenment. Your clinging to an identity is your lack of identity. Don't be surprised if there are 2 people in you now, the familiar face that comes and goes through the world, and another face, perhaps one you don't even know yet. This is the one inviting you. You are not in the world. You are not of the world. You are the world and the discovery of that. You are experiencing itself. Formless, timeless, boundless, creative capacity. Illumination happens when you have not only released the small I, but also the larger I. It identifies with no thing. It is pure light. The illuminated one has reached the enlightened God state in full knowing, in words beyond words, and even in the space between the words. Here lies pure truth. The illumined one just is. So this is the child. This is the human being that's seeking all the signs and symbols. And this is the shadow and the love affair between the shadow and the human. And that's your journey to love. And I will share. I sit before you bare naked, proud, humble, and celebrating the allness of me. In the midst of everything harsh, dark, wounded, soft, light, and whole, in its beauty and its brilliance, through its murkiness and the grit, demon, fallen angel, animal, human, soul nature, angel rising and God goddess, in the midst of what appears to be reality and the fine threads of illusion draped in the tapestry of story and time, through the valleys of death, climbing the mountains of longing, and above and beyond the world to belonging. I have crossed through oceans of tears and walked the desert into death's valley. I have risen again and again as a phoenix from ashes to ashes, and laid to rest in the winds of change as dust to dust, revealed the crystalline nature of an ever-rising staircase into the high heart of the most high place. I am free, truly free, of all my secrets and skeletons, deceit and despair, mania and manipulation, in this unconditionally loving embrace of the dark guardian who sacredly escorted my every action to the careful courtship from the light side of my being. Why would I condemn any piece, part, action, circumstance, or experience I've ever had? And that's me falling in love with me. Which is what I'm here to do.
And with that reading, you may well have just answered a question that's been posted by Frances Mary, who has some wonderful things to say about you. She said that she loves this interview because you radiate love, humility, and wisdom, and you've clearly, walked your talk. And years ago, she heard you share your story while you were on the road, the Rebel Road Tour, and she applauded your bravery to leave the abusive and traumatic life you were living. But she was also in awe of your ability to create a new life that included writing and publishing works to assist those of us who were also going through our own dark nights of the soul. My question is, how do you describe freedom? And when did you first feel freedom? And I think you've just given us the answer there. But if you want to say more about that, feel free.
I think the only thing that I would add to that is freedom came when I was willing to accept all of me, without conditions and without care of what the world would think. And I realized that all I am is creative capacity, and all I am here to do is create beauty. And as long as I let those 2 things be my compass, then I'm free.
I'm going to invite anyone who has a question to post it now, or if they have a comment. And while they're doing that, I want you to read what you added to your page on the website. In closing, you've already spoken about the first 3 books. So if you want to start at any point in that feels appropriate to you, because I think this is such a beautiful summary, such a beautiful end piece.
I have written 3 books in sacred witness to my experiences and ultimately to create connection. Each one represents something different within me. Conversations with the Universe is my human self, the seeker, the wanderer, the explorer, and philosopher, making sense out of the nonsense. Your Journey to Enlightenment represented both the higher self and the childlike innocence within me. And Your Journey to Love represented my humanity, my shadow, the wounded child, and the divine feminine. The writing of these books was an experience of unity with the divine and the innocence with which I entered physical form. It was a visceral embodiment and true spiritual expression. The reading of books feels like a warm embrace to me, especially when they resonate so deeply with my personal experience. Each of the books I shared have been stepping stones of remembering and wholeness. I believe that books find their way to us, and they are likened to angels that guide. They remind and confirm in powerful ways. These 10 books also provided permission to author my own experiences. When giving ourselves the space to write our own books, we become sacred witness, steward, and wisdom keepers that are the wings from which we fly, this becoming angels, reminders, and guides for others. Nothing new is ever written, but to feel another's heart and soul is the soulful reminder of a sacred witness. Each of the books that I have shared came to me as confirmation of what I experienced, but was not evident in anyone within my immediate vicinity. Those books were light bearers, way showers, and ancestral family, from those who had walked the same roads before me. I meet others through their books. I commune with them. I bow to them in namaste. Through their book, I see them. In reading their books, I feel seen, heard, and understood. I find my mirrors, and this always provides fodder for even deeper reflection, where I am once again met by a guide that confirms the meaning of my existence.
Yes, you definitely love books, don't you? Yeah. Simran, we always ask people about keywords, and you gave me several that are on the website. Rebel, humanitarian, love catalyst, writer, author. You're a poet, you're an artist, you're all kinds of things. I'm not going to ask you for another one because I think we have had a really deep insight into who Simran Singh is tonight. But I am going to ask you a question. You use the phrase living, being, knowing. What does that phrase mean to you?
Years ago, when I was given the insight to start 1111 magazine, and that would be the way that I could heal and others could heal, I was given the numbers, I was given the sacred geometry that is the logo, and I was given those words. And throughout my life, I never quite understood why they came in that order, because you would think they would be in a different order. You would think it would maybe be living, knowing, and then being, because most people think being is the final step. But being is actually the middle step. And I think that is ultimately what my life has been. It has been an experience of living, an experience of multidimensional being, and coming to a place of knowing. And ultimately, that's what 1111 meant as well. It was the 4 pillars that we have to align with: the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. It is the gateway. It is illustrative of us all being the ones and all being the one. And so everything kind of came together with it. The sacred symbols represented energy, truth, growth, and wisdom, and ultimately unification when the circles were combined. And whether that was channeled or whether that was imagined or whether that was inspired and created. We are each God walking, and we're in partnership with that higher spirit. And I'm very blessed and graced that somehow every step of the way I was given the signs and the symbols, even though I had no clue what I'm doing. Still have no clue what I'm doing. The more I live life, the less I know. And
Well, I think that's probably not a bad thing, because when I look at what you're doing, when I look at what you've done, I mean, I've known you 8, 9 years, I can't remember, and everything you do because you are called to do it. It's not for any other reason. You know, I've been around long enough and met enough people in my life not to be awed, you know, by people. But you are someone who continually inspires me and gives me that feeling of awe and quietude. You know, I'm unusually quiet around you because I just want to receive what you have to say. But you, I mean, you created 1111 magazine without any resources, no background in, you know, I come from a magazine background. I know what that takes. And you did it, and you did it beautifully. You created 1111 radio show. You created the Rebel Road tour, which was just phenomenal. And the guts, the sheer, you know, I'm just going to do it, is so admirable. Tell us a little bit about your TV interviews, and your mastermind community before we finish.
absolutely. I will say all the words that you called me before, I feel like I've outgrown them, as if they're identities that don't work anymore. And I think the only real identity that any of us are here to embody is example. And if my life can simply be an example, then that my life was worth everything. Because I think that ultimately, if we can just be an example to ourselves and others, then we've served our true purpose. And we don't have to know what we're doing, and we can be scared in the process. We can still move forward. Interviews are different conversations with individuals that are very heartfelt. I have always been about the heart and about insight and connection. I think I've deeply longed for connection, and I've used media to allow that for myself. And so more and more, I just want to have real conversations with people and help others connect to their hearts and their souls, and their deeper shadows and wounds and higher expressions of grace and godliness, so that they really embrace all of themselves. And so that's what interviews is about. And the mastermind community is simply a way to, it's actually a playground. I wanted to create a place where people could play with their creative expression and come together and create together, so that this creative capacity that we all have can shine. And yet I also know there are different people at different levels of the path that are still seeking and need things. And so this was a way, once again, to be that bridge between people that I feel like deserve to be celebrated and their gifts known about, and bridging them with the people that are seeking the knowledge in a way that is affordable and easily accessible, and allows them to have an even further taste of those people to decide who they really need to go work with and play with in their own lives.
And you also, 1111 magazine is also available as a course on audio. Say a
Yes.
little bit about that.
Yes, so I turned it into not just an audio reading of the magazine, but actually with added meditations and intentions and mentoring prompts, so that individuals that really wanted an ongoing touchstone to work on themselves, that there's guided prompts, because sometimes it gets hard to remember to stay with us, with this big world out there and being so outwardly projected. And so this was meant to be an easy grow on the go kind of experience, where people could get tidbits and nuggets by audio, have the meditations to ground themselves, and then have the inquiries to continually contemplate and grow themselves in the process in a more structured way. We have a lot of information in the world that's thrown at us, and sometimes it's good to just have a structure.
I want to thank you for giving me that other keyword that it's like, of course, example, you know, of course. Why didn't I think of that? You know, it's perfect, and I'm going to add it to the website. Simran, is there anything you want to add before we close?
I just think what you're doing is so exciting. I love this idea, and I love the fact that you're celebrating other people. To me, that is an advancement in humanity. We live in a world where everyone's trying to just be seen and trying to uh, talk about themselves and trying to sell their work and all of those kinds of things. And this is refreshing. It's a refreshing way to celebrate other people. It's a refreshing way to connect and commune, to create community, and to have some really great conversations and insights and tidbits or pointers for people. And Sandie, you've always been cutting edge, and I adore you and I love you. And you all me too. So thank you for including me in this.
Well, I love the idea that you are me, I am you. You know, I have to say, Simi, we both have been doing interviews for a long, long time. And of all the interviews, the different shows I've done, I enjoy them all. But this book club is just, I cannot even begin to describe how much fun it is, because people are just so open. The guests are so open and honest. They're not selling anything, they're just sharing. And I think for others who are waking up to have this kind of repository where people like you we hear your journey, we hear what has influenced you, and I think that's a better recommendation than any book jacket, you know, or any promo campaign can possibly give. And I think we need it. We need it. Thank you for participating.
Thank you for having me. And thank you all for showing up.
My pleasure. Well, everybody, you can go to iamsimran.com. You can go to 1111magazine.com. You know, you can Google Simran. Oh, we didn't get to speak about your 3 new books. Do you want to say a few words about those or not yet?
You know, how I know that I'm not done yet is usually when you become enlightened, you have nothing left to say. And 3 books and 1,000 pages later, I think I still have a lot to say. So my publisher won't let me talk about them yet because they won't be out until 2021 and 2022. But they feel like my life's work. These 3 books feel like the reason that I was literally birthed on this planet. And I'm so humbled by what they hold and how they read and what has come through me. I'm really excited. I'm really excited. And I think that this is probably the first time that I'm learning to celebrate myself. I think everything prior to now has always been about the creation and been about the service and been about putting something else out. But these 3 books feel like a place where I can finally celebrate having the life that I've had.
Simran Singh, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been more than a pleasure.
Always, always. Thank you all.
And thank you everyone for joining us. If you want to be the first to be notified of these events, you can join the No BS Spiritual Book Club private Facebook group or visit the video page at the No BS Spiritual Book Club.com. And you can download the audio version podcasts as well on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, and other podcast sites. We will be posting this interview on the website probably early next week. Thank you all for joining us. I'll see you again next week, I hope. Bye-bye.